Hello, dear friends. Before we dive into an exciting story, I'd like to ask you to do a couple of important things. 1. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with future exciting stories. 2. If you like our videos, be sure to give us a like. This will help us realize that you appreciate our hard work. And of course, feel free to leave a comment telling us which manhwa you'd like us to cover in the next video. Your opinion is important to us. So let's get started on our exciting journey. When he came to his senses, an unspeakable reality was revealed to him. Sanggun was in the body of a tiger, which became the character of this exciting adventure. The majestic mountains stretched before him, shrouded in a thick fog that seemed to weave in with everything around him. At times it was so dense that you couldn't even see your feet. At the foot of one of these mountains lay a dead dog that used to be tethered, but its life had been cut short like lightning, like an obsession. The killer disappeared without leaving the slightest trace behind him, as if he were a ghost. Obviously, we were facing an extraordinary beast capable of such a thing. Two men bent over the dog's body, their minds contemplating the riddle. Who could have performed such an act of flawless long skill? Surprisingly, the loops and traps remained in their place, undamaged and unharmed, as if the killer had the power to avoid each of these traps. The men's anger flared even more, seeing that the beast, in their opinion, should have at least felt pain, but there was not a single sign, not a single mark on its body. This unknown phenomenon made them nervous, and they decided to stand back and try to get away from the mysterious situation. Suddenly, however, Man Sam shouted, ordering his comrades to shut up, for their whining was preventing him from thinking and staying alert. As for the unholy premonition, it was still growing stronger in his soul, warning him that they were in an extremely dangerous situation. So they decide to move cautiously away, leaving their traps behind, with the hope of being able to retrieve them tomorrow. Moonlight shrouded the road, giving the night a little peace. The men made the decision to stay close together, not to retreat or act spontaneously until they reached the valley. But suddenly, blood spurted in all directions, and before they could even touch their weapons, they saw one of their comrades being torn apart by the mighty claws of the beast. The corpse lay on the ground, shrouded in bitter blood, and a huge monster towered over it, as if it had surfaced from nightmares, its figure seeming to exude gloom and darkness. The beast flung the body of its ruthless comrade away with careless ease, yawning as if it were but a tedious moment. It all happened so quickly that the men only had time to grab their weapons and let out a piercing scream in despair. But no matter how fast they reacted, their actions were slow compared to the ruthless beast. The terrifying figure of a sinister tiger spread out right in front of them, with its red eyes, heated mouth full of sharp fangs, and the monster's eyes seemed to glow with fire. Suddenly, like a tornado, he pounced on them, and shreds of flesh and blood flew around, raising dust in the air. They angered the one who was best not to be messed with, for he was the master of these mountains. Only one man survived, but his arm was torn off by the beast. The tiger stood before him, a blue glow emanating from it. He was huge, with two ruby eyes that seemed to glow from within. Many years have passed. In a cozy village surrounded by mighty mountains, people make constant sacrifices to their mysterious mountain master. Each time the long-awaited day arrives, the residents begin whispering among themselves, speculating who will be the next victim. It was decided to send one of Beck's nobleman's slave girls named Choa to the monster. This girl has always been a mysterious person. She had scarlet hair and eyes that seemed to be illuminated with light, like that of a ghost. So on this gloomy night, Beck was going to escort the girl to the monster. She wrapped herself in a warm robe, trying to keep warm from the cold. As the sun disappeared over the horizon and darkness enveloped the surroundings, the maid brought the slave girl, and she and her master started on their way out of the village. The master walked at such a fast pace that Choa had to hurry to follow him. But to get to the beast, they needed to use the transportation carried by the 4 slaves. The girl's heart was pounding with nervousness, for before her was the unknown. She was to become the wife of a monster. Only mountains and thick fog stretched around her. Mysterious noises came from the forest, and fear encompassed her. 4 slaves dragged the carriage up the hill, their faces covered with sweat from the effort. Suddenly they heard a strange sound, and in a panic they abandoned the carriage, leaving the girl alone. Choa climbed out of the transport and looked around, wrapping her robe tightly around herself against the cold wind. She was dragging herself along the top of the mountain, surrounded only by darkness, thick fog, and the wind that hugged her as if to give her support. A huge cave stretched out before her, the sight of it surprising and increasing her interest. However, Choa immediately restrained her emotions, remembering that she would be meeting the mountain master soon, and she must behave with dignity. She would have to observe decorum to avoid annoying him, for she was about to become the bride of the master of the mountain himself. With her fear overcome, she stepped resolutely into the darkness of the cave. It was even colder in here than it was outside, so her breath visibly became vapor, escaping from her mouth. Fear crept in, like a snake slithering across her skin. Finally, she realized she couldn't keep going. And then, suddenly, there was a growl that made her even fall to her knees. The voice was menacing and demanding, and it asked, "Who are you?" In a moment of fear, her voice only squeezed out incomprehensible sounds, as if speech was eluding her. But then she pulled herself together and said that she agreed to become the master's wife and promised to respect her future husband. A grim silence followed in response, and it was only a moment before her gaze snapped back to the grim face of the tiger, with its bright, angry eyes staring straight at her. Choa was afraid she had said something wrong, and then the huge animal tilted its muzzle toward her, and the beast's terrifying eyes stopped in front of her. From this strange interplay of gazes, it seemed that there was something magical, light between them that connected them at this moment in time. The girl's brow covered with sweat, and she roared, remembering what she had been told about the pain the first time, and that to be his bride she would have to endure it. "I'm ready to give myself to you completely," she whispered. Then the beast answered her with a merciless growl. Its roar seemed endless and omnipresent to her. Tiger rumbled his menacing growl, ordering Choya to get out of here, for what she said didn't interest him. Under the influence of these words, the girl could not hold back her tears, and she began to cry and scream loudly, and her voice carried through the neighborhood like a last cry in the night. The beast tried to push her away again, for Sangun hated it when someone cried. He even covered his head with his paws, trying to avoid the sound. But she continued to sob. Then he began to comfort her, trying to stop her tears. Choa was disappointed that the beast was trying to chase his bride away. The tiger exhaled faintly and agreed, letting her stay at least one night, for it was already dark, and then with a claw he gently wiped a tear from her cheek. Her heart hammered with joy, and the girl hugged the beast with delight. Something magical and deep sparkled in his eyes. In the morning, the sun burst into the cave with its rays, waking Sangun from his slumber. Choa settled on him as if he were the most comfortable bed, and the tiger couldn't believe that he, so fearsome and powerful, was being used as a bed. What was even more amazing was that she had slept for so long. Sangun thought about the fact that women with white hair and blue eyes were actually very few in this world. And suddenly it became clear to him that Choi had squirrel blood, something placed on her by unknown forces, and she had become one of them. And now this little child would become a monster that would make everyone tremble. He couldn't believe it. But the blood of such creatures is a true elixir. Sooner or later, the monsters will come after her wherever she is. That's why it can't be left here. Suddenly, he noticed that the girl was awake and looking at him with loving eyes. She then proceeded to prove that after their night together, she was now officially his fiancée. He couldn't understand what she was saying and started to direct her home, but she replied that she was unable to do so, for she was commanded that if she did not become his bride, she would be punished. The beast erupted in anger and demanded that the names of those who had come up with this evil plan be named. It turned out that the daredevils behind it all were the nobleman Beck and his son. At that moment, all the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, and the beast realized that the bandits were also sent by humans. The picture was now clear. This little girl was also the victim intended for him as part of this dark plan. Choa, blinking in embarrassment, begged him not to leave her, claiming that she was good at doing laundry and capable of making a meal out of just about anything. She was adept at any task, assuring the tiger of her usefulness. Sangun looked at her and realized that if she were to be sent back to the village, there was hardly anything good waiting for her. He imagined the horrible picture of Choya lying dead on the ground, and it squeezed his heart terribly. Thus, he began to ponder his next course of action, and came to the conclusion that sending her to another village with some medicinal herbs might be her only chance of survival. So he told her to follow him outside. Taking her with him, he began to dash around, gathering various medicinal herbs, roots, and ginseng, without saying a word about leading her back to Ongol village. The girl was deeply disappointed and began to insist again that she was his fiancée. The beast exploded, began yelling nervously at her, declaring that there was no way he could be her husband, and ordered her to be silent and only act on his instructions. He said that if she sold the medicinal herbs she had collected, she could buy a small house and have money left over for a decent living. However, the girl refused and insisted that she only wanted him, looking at him with her blue eyes full of tears. Sangong flashed with incredible anger, and power and magic began to gather around him once again. He was the master of Bake Mountain, and was doomed to be alone forever. Suddenly, the beast abruptly turned around and disappeared into its cave, leaving Choya alone on the street with a bag of medicinal herbs in her hands. While trying to run after him, she was subjected to the menacing growl of the tiger, which forced her to leave immediately. Choa claimed that she was unable to go down from here, for she did not know the road and had no idea where Ongole village was. So Sangun, though reluctant, agreed to see her off, offering her a ride on his back. As he lay on the ground, she began to prepare herself to sit on his back, despite the pain and discomfort, as if struggling against the surface, not even sparing his head. As she climbed onto the beast's back, a landscape of incredible beauty unfolded before her. High mountains surrounded by forests rose to the peaks as if shrouded in clouds. The sight made her think that she might be the first person to sit on top of a tiger, and the thought gave her confidence. With a note of belligerence in her voice, she ordered Sangun to move forward, and together they soared into the sky as if floating in the clouds. She still called him man, and it infuriated the beast. When they finally landed, the girl saw the picturesque village below, located by the river and surrounded by high mountains. The view was amazing. The beast's ears were already hurting as Choa clutched at them like leashes, not noticing how much it bothered him. She apologized and hugged the tiger sharply, which shocked him to the core. He ordered her to jump off him quickly. The girl obediently got off him, and in response he turned abruptly and walked off back where they came from, leaving her alone. However, Choa wasn't going to give up so easily. Decisively, she turned and grabbed the beast by the tail and pulled it towards her, causing it to feel a sharp pain and sweat to appear on its muzzle. She started screaming, stating that she would not let him leave because after spending the night with him, she considered herself his full-fledged bride. In response, the tiger began to object irritably, claiming that he could not be her husband as he was only a beast. She has no idea what a real night together is like, thinking her words are nonsense. The girl continued to babble tirelessly about how she was now his chosen one and he was responsible for her. The beast became even angrier. He had gathered ginseng for her, making an effort for her well-being, but her incessant nudges had irritated him to the point of extreme annoyance. He again ordered her to leave him alone and sell the medicinal herbs he had gathered, suggesting she live her life in peace. But Choa was stubborn and determined. With anger, she threw the bag of herbs and declared that she didn't need the herb without it, not even realizing its value. The beast realized that this would not be so easily resolved, and despite her reluctance, suggested that she sell ginseng in a nearby village and return here with the money. The girl's eyes lit up at these words, and she rushed out to sell the herbs with joy. But she ran so fast that she tripped over a stone and fell to the ground. A grandfather was sitting outside near his cabin, cooking food over a fire, when he suddenly heard the voice of a girl coming with the intention of selling something. When Grandpa looked back, he was frightened. In front of him, according to his perception, stood an almost transparent girl with blue eyes like sapphires. For a moment, he even thought it was a ghost, and he bounced away sharply. Grandpa then began to look at what Choa had brought for sale. The merchandise amazed him, and he couldn't help but ask where she got such unusual items from. The girl announced that this item was given to her by her husband to sell and pay her dowry. The grandfather, looking at the merchandise, realized that the items looked over 300 years old, and realized that the child who came with them did not realize their value. She looked sweet and naive, her eyes glowing with ignorance, and Grandpa thought he could fool her. At first, he even had the thought of valuing this precious ginseng for just a few pennies. He quickly pushed such thoughts away, however, and wondered to himself how he could have thought to deceive a child. He then told her that he did not have the funds to buy such expensive goods, and that she should head to the rich man Kim. He insisted that she pass on Kim's words about it being real ginseng. Choa was very grateful to her grandfather for his advice and bowed before him. Meanwhile, Sangong was in his cave eating raw meat in a satisfied manner, happy that he was finally alone. Various thoughts swirled around in his head, and he convinced himself that it wasn't his fault that someone could be so easily fooled, and that, in fact, he was the injured party. The beast was outraged that his peace had almost been disturbed, and there was a sudden fear that the girl might return with a dowry. There was even an urge to leave this place. He shook his head to get rid of those evil thoughts. The beast became angry and growled menacingly that he was the master of Mount Beck and wasn't going to move because of some girl, while viciously chewing on meat. However, his mind began to remind him of the worries arising within. He realized that he was worried about Choya because he knew that the villains could have tricked her and maybe even beat her up or stolen the expensive ginseng, and in the worst case, even kill her. The thought struck him with horror and rage. Meanwhile, the rich man Kim was having dinner in his house when a servant came running to him and started insistently saying something. This infuriated the master, and he began to shout loudly at the servant. However, when the rich man heard that the doctor had sent someone to sell ginseng, he was greatly surprised. He was especially impressed with the root itself, which was large and looked great. The rich man's attention was drawn to the origin of this strange white-haired and blue-eyed child. After some thought, he remembered that she had been a slave in the house of Beck. Choa was scared that she had been recognized. And then the old man started shouting, claiming that she should have died and how she was able to escape from the beast and steal ginseng from someone. Trying to justify herself and explain that she was given the ginseng by her husband, she only made her master more enraged. He claimed she was too young to be a bride, accused her of stealing, and ordered her away while trying to take the ginseng from her. The girl clutched the root hard against herself, trying to protect it from the paws of the ruthless man who began to take the root from her. However, nothing was working out for the man, and he couldn't understand how the child was stronger than he was. Suddenly, he ordered a stick to be brought and started beating the girl until he took away the ginseng. As a battered, exhausted, and frustrated Choa returned to the spot where they parted ways with the tiger, tears began to drip from her eyes. She realized that no one was waiting for her there. With bitterness in her heart, she began to call out to the beast, trying to find it, but it was all in vain. In the deep forest, where wild monsters lurked in the darkness, waiting for the scent of blood to waft from her wounds as if to invite them to dinner, the girl was on the verge of danger. Suddenly, a roar of furious sangong sounded from the top of the mountain. Who dared the girl? The tiger shrieked in response, his cry echoing through the forest as streams of blue energy began to swirl around him and the girl. But what infuriated Sangun even more was the horrible sight of the beaten girl standing in front of him. He menacingly inquired who dared to do that to her. The girl turned around fearfully and gingerly touched her hand to his mighty paw. Her eyes filled with tears and she began to sob, unable to contain her fear and worry. At this time, Meister Kim finalized the settlement with the man who had assisted in taking the ginseng away from the girl. The man expressed his gratitude and assured them not to worry as he had already posted guards outside on guard duty. Now, if anyone decides to try to enter here, they're unlikely to succeed. The rich man at this time was still in the thrill of acquiring the ginseng, and his assistant left, knowing that with the money he had received, he could afford a long vacation of several months. He was already dreaming of going to a restaurant where girls were waiting for him, when suddenly something incredible happened in front of him. From the huge blue glow, the gate suddenly cracked with such force that the man was thrown aside by the shockwave. Suddenly, everyone around them was shocked and started questioning raucously about who dared to break into the owner's house. And at that moment, the man noticed the very blue-eyed girl who stood in front of him. His anger flared brighter and he began to yell at her, resenting how this little girl could show up here. It seemed she had taken too few hits, and it might have seemed like a suicide attempt. But suddenly, a huge, fierce tiger with burning ruby eyes appeared behind her and answered the man that he had yet to see exactly who was going to die here. The man and his guards were amazed at the appearance of this tiger in front of them. That's when Rich Man Kim suddenly ran out of his house. He didn't like the noise under his house at night. However, his footsteps suddenly froze as he saw shrapnel and guards begin to fly around him. He froze in place as if paralyzed with terror. All of his guards also froze as the huge tiger slowly approached in front of them, as if blazing with uncontrollable rage. Meister Kim stood in a complete stupor, unable to say or do anything. Sangun pointed reproachfully at the people gathered around him and expressed his indignation that they had united and were threatening the little girl. He emphasized that such acts make them worse than even garbage. After those words, the tiger roared with rage and prepared to attack anyone who stood in its way, promising to make amends to them for what they had done to the girl. However, suddenly the girl intervened and asked to just take the ginseng and leave. Sangun, looking at the girl, gradually calmed down and even felt a little upset that he wouldn't be able to take revenge on those monsters. Then he ordered ginseng to be brought to him. Instantly, the rich man brought all the ginseng to the tiger, and then he fell on all fours, beginning to complain as if he were protecting the ginseng so that nothing would happen to it. But Sangong strongly disliked this and shouted loudly at the rich man, ordering him to shut up and stop lying. The rich man, in tears, begged for mercy. The tiger said he was alive only because of the girl, after which he added that if it were up to him alone, he would rip off his dirty face. However, Sangong said that in return, the rich man should give the tiger all his wealth down to the last grain of rice. Rich Kim, of course, agreed. He ordered his servants to start collecting all his wealth and bring it to the top of Bake Mountain. The next day, Sanggun lay in his cave, gazing at the majestic wealth that now belonged to him. He found it hard to believe how all this could have happened. How his usual cozy refuge and quiet routine could turn into this miracle. Suddenly, Choa ran up to him, calling him her husband again, and happily began serving wild raspberries she had found for him to try. But Sanggun remained unfazed. He realized that by bringing the girl back, nothing had changed. He then headed to the creek for a drink of water, and the girl followed him. After a while, they found themselves in a marvelous place where in the middle of mountains and forests there was a blue lake, like a miracle of nature. A goldfish named Manhwa appeared in front of them and suddenly said, "As soon as you came, my life got better." Tiger was already familiar with this mysterious fish. He politely asked her to give him back what he had left her. The fish pulled a small box out of its mouth and handed it to the girl. Choa eagerly opened the box and found there an amazingly beautiful hairpin that glittered like stars in the night sky. Sangong said that this hairpin was carved from a peach tree that is over 1,000 years old. This jewelry has an amazing property to ward off evil spirits, and therefore a girl should always keep it with her. Choa was delighted with the gift, and tears of joy glistened in her eyes, for it was her first real gift. Fondly hugging the hairpin, she promised that she would cherish the gift. The next day, we see a little girl with a magic hairpin snoozing peacefully on the tiger's belly. Sanggun, not realizing when she lay down next to him, suddenly gets up, and that movement woke up the little girl. The tiger spoke to her, telling her it was time to prepare for the long journey. The girl, full of curiosity, asks where they are going, but Sanggun only replies that even if he tells her, she still won't understand. However, he orders her to take with her all the valuables she can take. The girl walked over to the things and wondered which one she should take with her. Suddenly, the tiger heard the voice of an incomprehensible woman sounding right inside his head like a ghost, which entered into a dialogue with Sangong. The girl's voice, as if extracted from her deepest thoughts, asked the tiger, "Are you obliged to act in this way?" Sanggun answered her that he was not going to interfere in her fate of the blue-eyed girl, as if she was free from his influence. But a voice in his mind insisted that perhaps the girl's fate was tied to the tiger. Perhaps she was destined to become the bride of this mysterious creature. The reason for Sanggun's alienation from the world lay in his recent past. He still carried a morbid fear of making connections with others, and this was his way of protecting himself. Sanggung emphatically rejected this dialogue. He argued that man should have his own human destiny, which is very different from his animal nature. At that moment, Choa joined the dialogue with a sack in her hands, ready for the long journey. Next, a fascinating scene plays out in front of us where a black panther with yellow eyes and a scar on one of them comes with a black-haired ghost girl, Hong Yen, to Sanggun's cave. In this mysterious place, they discover that no one is there. The girl begins to ponder aloud, speculating that perhaps Sanggun ran away due to fear of her panther mistress. Why not, since for some reason he's not in his own abode? However, the panther begins to laugh, as if dispelling all doubts, and suggests that they stay in this place, because it was so warm and cozy. She is confident that the tiger will definitely come back. At that, the panther, smiling, said, "And I'd be interested to see his reaction when he finds out I'm here." In the next exciting scene, we are taken to a mountain path where Dusan's grandfather and a little boy, his apprentice, are walking slowly. And then suddenly, as if out of nowhere, a tiger appears in front of them, instantly instilling fear in the boy. The little boy stared dumbfounded at this unexpected phenomenon, his eyes full of terror. But his grandfather quickly calms him down, assuring him that everything is fine. Sanggun, on his side, meets his grandfather's gaze, and a connection seems to form between them. But then the grandfather and the boy notice a girl sitting on the tiger's back, waving at them in a cute gesture. This unexpected sight genuinely startles them, and they cannot hide their amazement. Next we see Tiger, being an incredible predator, hunting deer in the forest. He was greedy, as he was not always happy to share his spoils. He was willing to be patient, however, realizing that there was less and less time left until Huajang village, where his journey was to end. Sanggun returned with his booty, and Choa was delighted at how quickly he'd made it. She couldn't hold back her admiration and said that, in her opinion, among all predators, he certainly had the most outstanding skills as a hunter. Sangong, proudly raising his head, replied that it was just an easy way for him. All he had to do was just say the word and everything would be under his paws. Then he tore off a piece of meat from the deer's leg and gave it to Choya. However, she could not eat raw meat, and she had no skill in making fire. Fortunately, Dusan and the disciple they had met earlier stopped beside them. They offered to share the fire, and the girl agreed, promising them in return to share some of their prey as a token of their gratitude. After the ginger cat had enjoyed his fresh prey, he wondered why the girl was taking so long to do something there that was supposed to be a simple task of bringing fire. As he gazes at her actions, he notices that the girl is chatting with a boy who has a smile up to his ears. This moment arouses his curiosity. After a while, the meat is almost done and the tiger decides to find out what they have been talking about for so long. The girl tells that this boy, named Bi Chong, is the same age as her, and they decided to become friends. Suddenly, their dialogue is interrupted by a loud sound coming from the girl's stomach as she is hungry. In response to this unexpected grouch, the girl begins to panic and say whatever comes into her head, claiming it was a howl from the tiger's belly. Sanggun doesn't understand what the big deal is because in his world, there's no shame in feeling hungry. However, Choa insists on his point of view and even starts to get angry. She eventually takes the meat from the fire and runs away from the tiger. Suddenly, as if out of nowhere, the predator would hear the mysterious voice of the ghost girl again. Her reaction to his actions caused her heart to lightly laugh. She asked a question that literally hung in the air. Couldn't Sanggun understand the girl's feelings and why he doesn't follow her? It's dark and dangerous out there. But the tiger didn't realize what he had done wrong. He was convinced that the presented hairpin would be a protection for the blue-eyed girl. However, the girl's voice continued to insist on her point of view. It warned of the possible dangers in the forest and worried that she might get lost. However, the proud beast didn't care and continued to rely on fate, not understanding why that voice cared so much for the girl. In response, the ghost said something that made Sanggun think, "You can't be honest with yourself." Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by Dosan's grandfather, whom the girl had treated to some meat. His mood was aggressive and he began to shout, expressing his anger and frustration. It turned out that he realized that the tiger, which the girl thought was a sacred animal, was actually, in his eyes, just a creature capable of killing people. This grandfather was from Mount Conrian and was well aware of the ghost that was always near the tiger. This ghost was once a human, but after his death at the hands of Sanggun, he began to enchant other people and bring them to his new master. Suddenly, surrounded by a purple glow, a black-haired girl in a dress named Huaran appeared in front of the tiger. Grandfather was furious and shouted that he was staking his honor as a Conrian warrior and promised that there would be no mercy. Sanggun, remaining calm, sighed and told Huarong that she was at fault for this situation and should resolve it on her own. This time, the old man's opponent was Huaran, who had retrieved a sword from a magical necklace. Grandpa was amazed to see this necklace that could hold absolutely anything, no matter the size. Before the scramble began, Grandpa asked what this amazing thing was and where she got it from. However, the girl replied that when people are trained in martial arts, they become overconfident. So talking no longer mattered, and a sword being drawn meant the start of the fight. The old man got angry and resorted to his ability, the dragon art. Suddenly, Dusan seemed to have cloned and headed at the girl from all directions. He didn't feel sorry for her, as he believed she had lost her humanity, and he was sure his attacks would help send her to the other world. He attacked her with his sword, swinging it, but she skillfully deflected his blows. The old man was shocked by her fighting prowess, and after a few rounds of fighting, Huarong said that if he could be so rough with the girl, she should respond with a decent punch as well. Huarong was striking with his sword so powerfully and relentlessly that Grandpa could barely hold his sword in his hands. She continued to attack repeatedly and without stopping that even the ground began to shake around them. Even the dragon art didn't help the old man. He tried to use it to escape from her, but it was to no avail. In this instant of battle, Grandpa's disciple came to the scene of the battle. His face expressed deep fear for his teacher. The old man couldn't understand how this was even possible, how he could lose to some ghost. It made him wonder if Hwarang was really a ghost, or if there was more to the story. The scene changes to a view of Choya sitting on a hill, enjoying the meat with great gusto. Sanggun comes to her and suggests she move to the campfire, explaining that it is chilly. At the same time, he is amazed at how good the girl's appetite is, comparable to his own. However, the girl, turning around resentfully, continues to remain silent. Tiger decides to leave, wishing her well as it has cooled his enthusiasm a bit. But then the girl suddenly starts running after Sanggun, calling him husband again. The predator realized that it couldn't be otherwise in this situation. After all, the girl was only a child after all. Suddenly, Sanggun stops abruptly, and Choa, without noticing it, slashes right out at him, hitting his spout. The tiger is alert and whispers, "Be quiet." He realizes that they are not alone here. They have found themselves in the territory of a black soul ghost. The ghost wastes no time and instructs the tiger to leave the girl and remove himself if he hopes for mercy. Tiger knew it would happen sometime, but he didn't expect it to happen so soon. He realizes he must survive at all costs. Choa looks at Sanggun with pitying eyes and grabs his leg, starting to think it's because she's angry. She starts promising that she will never do this again, begging him not to leave her. But the tiger is not ready to go to his death with her. He leaves, telling the girl to accept her fate. Choa froze silently, watching the tiger move away. Behind him, an evil ghost appears in the green-black smoke. We move again to the moment of the old man's battle with the Warren ghost, where the old man loses the fight. The girl kneels him down and explains that they have no intention of harming the child. Dusan has no other choice. He has to believe it. Then the old man wonders what they're doing with the child here. He begins to tell the story that since ancient times, many people have died in these places, and all the corpses were limbless, as if they were trying to find something inside them. But suddenly, a huge green glow noisily interrupts his story, signaling that something has happened. At this instant, a huge, pale, and skinny ghost with green eyes from which a mystical green glow emanated appears in front of us. He held a sword in his hands, and a sinister smile played on his face. The ghost took Choyu without a word, thinking that he was the luckiest ghost in this world. And here we have before us a scene of a ghost carrying a girl on his shoulder across a vast field. Next, we delve into Choi's memories where she recalls her hard life. All the children in the village resented her and shunned her because she looked like a ghost because of her white hair and blue eyes. The girl was homeless and had to beg on the streets just to get some food, but even the adults mocked her, saying she was bringing bad luck to the village. It seemed like the whole world had united to turn against her, labeling her as a ghost, a monster, a loser, and a monster. One cold winter day, Choa sat at the entrance to the rich man Beck's house, shivering with cold. Her unprotected state did not go unnoticed by the owner of this luxurious mansion. Beck decided to take the girl into his home. He immediately provided her with clean clothes and a cozy room, and provided her with food and comfort. However, despite all her good deeds, Choa encountered unfriendly attitudes from the home staff. They were afraid of the unusual girl, and not understanding why she was brought to this house, humiliated her. Every day the girl was expected to work under harsh and inhumane working conditions. If she failed to meet the deadline, she was threatened with food deprivation. But the girl did not give up. She tried to work hard to avoid expulsion. This was because she was different from the other girls in the house. She didn't follow the same standards of beauty, joy, and family happiness as the rest of us. After a hard day's work, she found a corner of peace near her cabin and stared up at the sky, dreaming of the most tender and cherished feelings, of love, of marriage, of family. This young girl, so passionate about the idea of love and marriage, began her dreams by listening to retold conversations that included words like love, family, marriage, and husband. Sitting alone under the light of the moon and the brilliance of the stars, she turned to the heavens, asking questions of the moon and stars. She asked them if she could ever find the one man who would be willing to fight for her, take care of her, and be her husband. And one day, the girl's dream came true. Meister Beck appeared to her and announced that she should marry Sanggun. This sudden event stunned her, and for a long time she could not believe her happiness. Who was this mysterious man she had been told about? Her heart rejoiced that now she would have a family of her own and would no longer be lonely. As time went on, it turned out that her groom would be a tiger, and the girl was frightened that he could possibly devour his bride at any moment. Despite all the hardships, she always believed that her life was like this because she could not become human, but was just a ghost that took on human form. Next, we see a scene where the ghost of the Black Soul leads her to an obscure cave where dead animal bodies hung on the walls. The ghost says her blood belongs to him now and it will be bliss. He then raises the knife to her neck and urges her not to grieve, promising a new incarnation. At this point, the girl admits in her thoughts that she hates the tiger for everything she's been through, hating meeting him, his friendship, his warm hugs and gifts. Everything that had happened had been a gift from the tiger, and she couldn't forgive him for that. Suddenly, Choa fell to the ground and heard the loud scream of the Black Soul ghost, and in front of her, the tiger was holding the ghost's hand in its mouth. Then the tiger called out to Warren, and in a moment she was at the girl's side, beginning to calm her down. The girl asked who she was and what was going on here. In response, Hwarang explained that Sanggun was currently fighting a horrible creature that was very strong and a threat to the girl. This fight was a strategic move by the tiger as he treasured the girl immensely. Hwarang demonstrated to the girl as the tiger tried to protect her from the ghost, despite the enemy's multiple superiority. At that moment, Choa remembered the words she had spoken before the moon, wishing to find the only husband who would protect and love her, doing everything for her. These words made her cry as they were a realization of her true feelings and desires. Choa, in floods of tears, promised the woman that she would now follow the tiger's advice and guidance. Realizing that the tiger was concerned for her safety, she felt it was her only way to survive. Hwarang took the girl to a safe place because the tiger couldn't fight at full strength to avoid hurting the girl. After they left, the tiger was able to break out in full force and engage the ghost again. Tiger gathered all his strength and concentrated on the magical blue core, charging it into his mouth. He knew this was his last chance. With a powerful shot, the cannonball flew out of his mouth, slamming into the ghost with tremendous force. The ghost was knocked off his feet and slammed into the ground, which cracked under its powerful impact. Sangong jumped on the ghost, killing it with his powerful paws. However, the tiger notices something strange and jumps away from the ghost. The ghost was not going to give up so easily. He changed his appearance into a huge rat without hair, and his blood turned into poison. He threateningly warned the tiger that he had not considered his true strength, and that he would not get away alive. The ghost's blood turned into tiny red rats with green eyes, and they began to lunge at the tiger. The tiger fought back with powerful paws, but with every contact, his paws began to burn as if they were on fire. It seemed impossible to stop these little bloody rats. With each passing second, they became more and more numerous and surrounded the tiger, rushing at him from all sides. Tiger stared at them paralyzed and felt the venom engulf his body. He lacked Hwarang's help and prayed that some miracle would save him. Finally, out of his last strength, he fired another magical blue core from his mouth, which somewhat held back the rat's advance. The tiger, exhausted from the heavy effects of the poison and the attacks of the rats, stood his ground from the last of his strength. The huge rat, laughing merrily and viciously, approached him. She wondered how the tiger dared to defy her and try to resist her attacks. The rat seemed confident of his victory and set about completing his sinister mission with determination. Suddenly, Hwarang popped out. Making a skillful jump, she attacked the rat from behind. The impact made the rat scream in pain, at which point the tiger, not missing an opportunity, unleashed his furious fist, landing on the rat and delivering a crushing blow. From this force of impact, the rat shattered into pieces and burned with a bright blue flame. The battle was over, and the victory belonged to Sanggun with Hwarang. After the fight, Tiger walked out of the cave, taking a deep breath. He recognized that he was on the verge of death. Hwarang reassures him, reminding him that they were able to obtain a sword and some eyes that will be useful in future trials. Sanggun wonders where Choa is and gets the answer that the girl asked Old Man Do-san to accompany her to Hwajang village. Hwarang explains that if Tiger were defeated, it would mean that Hwarang would lose his power. The woman begs him to return to Choi. Sanggun thinks about it and concludes that all these events began after he left Baek Mountain. This indicates that similar trials will accompany them in the future. He realizes that with his current strength, he will not be able to protect Choa reliably. But the eyes he got after defeating the rat have a unique ability, reincarnation. Tiger realizes that if he could take on human form, he would gain great power. He will now be able to use his sword and fight stronger opponents, as well as learn the long-awaited skill, the flame blue phoenix flower. Before he does, however, he realizes that there is something more important he must do, turn into a human. A girl walking with Do-san and Bi-chong decides to find out where they are going. She thinks it would be more convenient to wait for Sanggun. The old man explains that behind the mountain is a small village called Huajang and suggests that they wait for him there. The boy intervenes, arguing that a girl cannot marry a tiger. In response, the girl irritably asks him not to dictate to her what she can or cannot do, because the tiger is her husband and that is non-negotiable. Along the way, they came across a man walking beside the wagons. Recognizing the old man, he decided to join them in accompanying them on their journey. Next, we are transported to Mount Udon and see a mob of boar-like beasts gathered around their leader. A chief named Udon addresses them, saying that the number of people in their land is constantly increasing, and for the people, all the animals are becoming food. He emphasizes that they need to do something about it as they need to protect their land and preserve their species. It is the chief's words that inspire the boars and set them on the path of self-preservation. The old chief, deep down, longs to leave this place, but he realizes that abandoning his people would be too selfish an act. Then, suddenly, a crow flies to Chief Wudong, whispering something in his ear. The chief orders everyone to stand back, and we see Sanggun come to the old man's caban. He explains that it's been 30 years since they last met, and the old man asks the tiger what he wants. The guardian of Mount Beck explains that he has come in search of the flame flower. The boar chief informs him that he has this flower, but is only willing to give it to him in exchange for a favor. Sanggun agrees and asks what the favor is. The boar explains that given that the tiger has defeated such a bloodthirsty rat, the task will not be difficult. He then explains that Sangunu needs to go with Uji, the chief's son, and give him assistance. After this moment, we see a large number of boars descend from Mount Udon, including a tiger as well as Hwaran. Hwaran has doubts about the choices the tiger has made, and she worries lest he be fooled. But the tiger assures her that this was the only way, and he had already gotten what he wanted. Then they come to the edge of the mountain, from where they could see the road. They discover that wagons accompanied by Taoists are coming alongside. The tiger, surprised, asks if they were thinking of stealing one of those wagons. The boar replies to Sanggun that they are willing to risk their lives. Apparently, their goal is to obtain the Orb of Increase, which the Taoists transport in these wagons. Tiger is surprised to learn that the wagons contain a potion of augmentation that can expand territory. This balloon is the envy of many, and dreaming of acquiring one is commonplace. Faced with this unexpected idea, Sanggun decides that he does not wish to participate in the attack on the Taoists. However, the boar reminds him that the tiger has already given his word to his father by making a deal. Sanggun internally protests, unwilling to risk his life for such an enterprise, but realizes there is no turning back. Old Man Udon had given the tiger this task not only to test his abilities, but also to determine how ready he is to take responsibility for the possible consequences, be it victory or defeat. For when man attacks spiritual beasts, the latter are not left out and seek revenge. It seems that it is not only the sword masters who are in danger, but also the Taoists, and their intentions to invade the mountain could lead to the clan's demise. In this context, the emergence of the Sanggun was an important development and an advantage. Back to the other beasts who, shouting Sanggun's name, rush full speed towards the humans. The swordsmen try to repel the attack on the merchant. When they spot a tiger, there are shouts as if he is the leader of this horde, and it is suspected that he is the same Sanggun rumored to be among the other beasts. This causes the swordsmen to focus their attention and strength on the tiger, aiming to destroy it. Eventually, Sanggun realizes that he is trapped in a trap set by the old man, and that the sword masters have made him their primary target. The chieftain's son sees Sanggun as a convenient victim to transfer the hatred they feel for their clan and hopes it will keep them safe. The swordsmen, having already defeated several of the beasts, realize that the battle is far from over, and that the boars are not giving up. Hwaran, standing next to Sanggun, explains that the boars have betrayed them, and the tiger begins to contemplate how to proceed. The girl suggests they leave the place and return to Mount Beck in safety. However, the tiger decides to confront the Taoists as he is not ready to give them what they want. He warns the girl to be careful as these are dangerous experts. At this moment, inside one of the carriages, we see a man named Sa Hyun, who, hearing the noise, decides to get out. Choa, Bichong, and Grandpa were also in the wagon. Leaving the wagon, the man meets one of the warriors who tells him that participation in the battle is not necessary. However, after realizing the situation, the man decides to act. He starts ringing a magic bell, and from it comes a blast of tremendous force, pushing the boars and tiger off in different directions. Tiger immediately realized it was their leader. Sa Hyun sees Sanggun and instantly pulls out the magic cards. Suddenly, wooden stakes fly out of his hands, aimed at Sanggun. However, the tiger manages to avoid their blows due to its agility and reaction. Impressed that he was able to dodge the attack, the man pulls out more magic cards and tries to attack the tiger again. But he dodged again, remaining unharmed, much to the anger of the man seeking to destroy him. This time, the man decides to use a more powerful attack. The attack proves so strong that Sangun seems unable to dodge it. However, using his unique ability, the ominous blue flame of the fierce claw, the tiger manages to destroy the stakes that are stuck in him. In this way, Sangun is freed from the trap, and both the Taoists and the boars are stunned by Sangun's surprise attack. We see the tiger standing, with several stakes driven into his back, with an angry expression looking at everyone around him. The Taoist leader is stunned by the fact that Sangun survived, even though he used all his energy in the attack. Then Hwaran, who stole the orb during the battle, comes to the tiger. The girl notices that the tiger is seriously injured and is very worried about him as she sees that his strength is running out. She decides to use her power of invisibility and they leave the place. By the time someone informs the Tao head that the augmentation orb has been stolen, he is literally raging with rage. It is clear to him that without the orb he will be expelled from the faction, and he orders his warriors to pursue the fugitive. Choa, leaning out of the wagon and overhearing the conversation, learns that Sangun is injured and begins to worry about him. After escaping, Sangun and Hwarang engage in a brief conversation, and she expresses her concern about the state of his body. Soon, Sangun falls to the ground. Alarmed, the woman offers to pull the stakes out of him, claiming it is the only way to save him. As she begins to remove one of the stakes, she notices roots reaching inside the tiger. Tiger insists that all spears must be removed. She explains that it could be dangerous because of the heavy bleeding, but Sangun claims that if the roots aren't removed, they will eventually suck out all of his blood. Prompted by the predator's insistence, Hwarang agrees, though with some uncertainty about the rightness of this decision. At this time, the warriors commanded by Seihen discover a drop of blood that gives them the first clues to the tiger's whereabouts. One of the warriors warns his comrade to be careful, but the other seems confident and announces that Sangun may be in a state of uncertainty. He also makes a remark about the powerful force that Hwaran used, and suggests that if they manage to take that power away from her and retrieve the orb, they will be rewarded. The woman, having completed the process of extracting all the stakes, looks over the body of Sangun, who has lost consciousness. She feels he has lost too much blood, and her main concern becomes his awakening. Suddenly, Hwarang turns quickly and is confronted by two men who are clearly looking for Sangun with the intent to kill him. The girl instantly draws her sword and rushes into battle with her opponents. At the same time, Sa-hyun, who has regained his powers to level 3 after his fight with the tiger, decides to go in search of Hwarang. His interest in the obese she was carrying becomes particularly acute, and he is sure that if he can catch them, he will be the richest man alive. The mystical tiger and his glittering treasure give this moment an incredible magic. Finally, he discovers Sangun's body lying breathlessly on the ground. At this time, Bichong becomes worried as he can't find Choa and decides to inform his teacher, Do-song. He explains that he assumed she may have gone into the bushes to the bathroom, but has not yet returned. The old man, sensing alarm, warns that it is dangerous in the mountains and there are still wild animals there. At this time, Choa decides to do whatever it takes to find Sangun. She doesn't understand why the tiger has engaged the warriors in battle, but she's sure he's come for her. Now she decides to set out to meet him, despite all the dangers and unknowns that await her. Se-hyun stands in front of the tiger's body, his gaze full of thought and emotion. He wonders if Sangun died pulling out the branches, though he's inclined to think that's what caused the tiger to fall. The thought seems mortifying to him. However, he realizes that Ghost has also disappeared since he lost his master. Sa-hyun begins his search for the pendant and ball, but in vain. To his chagrin, there is no sign of the treasure he has been searching for so long. He comes to the conclusion that his men probably stole the treasure, and this makes him furious. In a fit of anger, he decides to cut off the tiger's head as a symbol of his betrayal and loss. Anger and resentment prevent him from contemplating his next steps, and he sets out to find those who dared to touch what he believes is rightfully his. Sometime later, Choa, wandering through a flower field, stumbles upon the place where Sangun used to be and discovers the head of a predator. She picks it up, her face beginning to change from indifferent to an expression of joy. With a smile on her face, she meets this unusual gift, and looking at his head, asks if he is trying to play a prank on her. She does not intend to fall for such a prank. Choa then walks over to where the tiger's body lies and places the head next to it, where it was apparently originally located. At first, she asks him to stop joking and stand up, hoping it's just his simple mockery. However, when she releases the pressure, her head rolls back again. Choa gets serious for a moment, her gaze becoming more insistent, and she asks once more for the games to stop. Then the girl lifts her head again and puts it back down, telling him that he's had enough of the jokes. She repeats for him to get up, but his head rolls back again. After several attempts, the girl begins sobbing as she sits next to the tiger, experiencing strong feelings of helplessness and despair. After this agonizing scene, we see Hwaran carrying Sanggun's body. However, it accidentally slips out of her hands and the tiger instantly opens his eyes in alarm and asks when he fainted. The woman is glad that he's awake, and Sanggun replies that it's to her credit. However, upon taking a closer look, the tiger notices that she is surrounded by mystical black and pink flames, which causes him concern. We see a pastime in which Hwaran fights Dao warriors. They are amazed by her unusual abilities and decide to attack the tiger, realizing that if they kill the tiger, the ghost will also disappear. They throw kunai at Sanggun's breathless body. However, the woman stands up to his defense and takes the blow for herself. The woman begins to create illusions. One of the men, intrigued by her actions, decides to attack her to harm her, but his sword explodes in his hand, seriously wounding him. The second warrior kneels, his hands trembling. Hwarang approaches him, questioning if he is capable of accomplishing what she needs, claiming that defeating him will be easy. The man begs her to spare him, explaining that he is merely following orders. The woman, insisting, asks him if he wants her to let him live. He replies that he will do his best if she will let him stay alive. She then asks him if he is capable of using magic, and after receiving an affirmative answer, Hwaran asks him to learn the synthesis technique that was written on the stone and to hurry, explaining that he will have to consume the prepared ingredients. Now Sanggun realizes that the woman turned that warrior into a copy of him, and he tells the ghost that she's been through a lot because of him. Hwaran says that while the tiger was unconscious, she handed him the orb, and apparently it was indeed effective if the tiger was able to survive with such wounds. Now all he has to do is utilize all the useful properties of the orb, and that was the last help the girl could give him. Afterwards, she says she really enjoyed her time with the tiger. Tiger disagrees with Hwaran and thinks she just needs a rest. He doesn't understand why she's talking as if she's saying goodbye to him. The woman moves closer to him and gently touches her head to his nose. She's afraid to leave him alone, and while she's gone, she asks him to fulfill one request. Hwaran then disappears and the tiger is left alone, asking her to return as soon as possible, promising that he will be waiting for her. We then see the boars informing Udon of the situation. The boar chief, Udon, upon learning that Sanggun has managed to steal the Zhobanghuan orb and escape, admits that he underestimated him. He realizes that if the tiger recovers from his wounds and finds inner peace, he will surely return to take revenge on the boars. So he orders the boars to actively search for the tiger so that no time is wasted. The chief tries to keep their spirits up, saying that although Sanggun is strong, his injuries will leave him at a disadvantage. He insists that they must find and defeat the tiger, or they will become its victims themselves. Back to the tiger, who came to the same lake and called for the goldfish. The fish swims out and is surprised to see him in such a state with wounds. Tiger says there's no time to talk, they need to get out of here now. Fish agrees to follow the tiger's orders, but then asks him whether a little stub named Doncha, who suddenly crawls out of the ground, will go with them. Doncha informs the tiger that the heartless fish wants to leave him here alone, which causes irritation and arguments between the fish and Doncha. At the same time, we see the panther is in a cave in Beck Mountain and suddenly smells Sanggun. Confident that she is right, she immediately heads towards him, full of anger and joy that it seems she will finally succeed in tearing him apart, but slows down abruptly and is surprised to see a wounded tiger. This really annoys her, and she asks who dares touch him. Sanggun walks on indifferently, and the panther wonders where he's going. The tiger replies that he has no time for games now and must go, for the Taoists and wild boars from Mount Udon will soon arrive, and continuing on his way. Hong Yen's ghost girl is surprised that the tiger was able to survive after a fight with the Taoists. It was an amazing sight for her, and she stops the tiger to talk to him. She explains that he is being chased by enemies and has suffered many wounds. Even more so, he is left alone and suggests that he team up with the panther, claiming that the panther wants to make peace with him. Sanggun realizes that there's little guarantee he'll make it to the cover location before they find him, and this offer seems as good as ever. However, he refuses, telling the girl that he can't trust her and doesn't want to continue on his way, fearing that danger may be waiting behind him. So the girl decides to use a magic tablet that directly links the lives of the people whose names are written there. As long as this plaque is in Sanggun's possession, the panther and the girl will not be able to harm him. Hongyan writes his name and his mistress's name on the plaque. After that, the panther begins to glow with a red glow. The girl hands the sign to the tiger, and finally he agrees to help. Together, they embark on a long and dangerous journey. After a few days, Sanggun and his new companions decided to take a short break. Sanggun was surprised that the Hongyan girl didn't seem tired at all despite several days of uninterrupted traveling. He watched her a lot and realized that her skills far exceeded his expectations. Suddenly, the tiger asked the girl to teach him how to hide his spiritual power. Though it was not an easy task, she agreed, but wondered what he could offer her in exchange. Tiger asked what she wanted, and the girl replied that she would be happy to receive Dobongquan's orb in return. Sanggun was astonished and couldn't understand how Hongyan knew that the orb was inside his magic necklace. He was sorry to give up this valuable artifact just to learn how to hide his spiritual power. However, the ghost girl offered him a trade that interested the tiger. She said that if he handed her the orb, he would in return receive an ancient holy book with powerful forces hidden in it. The book was very ancient, and understanding it was a challenge. However, if Sanggun could master it, he could easily realize his level to Shinsu. Tigre was greatly amazed at where the girl had gotten this book from, since for creatures like him, the power levels were divided into 6: Enmol, Engwa, Engyeol, Enmyeong, Engup, and Enwan. All magical creatures like the tiger dreamed of reaching the maximum Shinsu level, which was extremely difficult. However, if Sanggun could obtain this book, he could become much stronger without even raising his level. Hongyan said that this book belonged to her previous master, who was at the highest level, but was never able to fully master its power. The predator warns her that she has a lot to lose by giving him the book, but the girl claims it's okay and asks him to become more panther-friendly. Sanggun agrees, but suddenly they hear a noise coming from the boars approaching them. Since they have already agreed, the girl decides to stay put, while the tiger and panther need to continue their journey forward. It wasn't long before the tiger woke the panther up and said it was time to go. Panther asked Hongyan why she wasn't joining them, and she said she'd do it later. After a while, as the animals moved forward, the girl found herself surrounded by aggressive boars. During the journey, the tiger provides the panther with a Dobongquan orb and, because of this, raises its level. The panther was amazed and asked why the tiger had given her such an expensive artifact. Sangong explained that he had gotten something from Hongyan in return. As time passed, they reached a lone, withered tree standing in the middle of a field. The tiger put his paw on the tree and something magical happened. The tree suddenly blossomed with yellow leaves, and steps leading down to the shelter appeared in front of them. They descended the stairs to assimilate their new powers in safety. Sanggun realized that once he raised his level, no one else would be able to threaten his life, and no one would get hurt because of him. After the moment Hongyan stood beside that magic tree, the boars chided her that they were tired of waiting and demanded that she open the place, assuring her that they could handle it themselves. But suddenly, there was a huge explosion from the ground and a man appeared out of it. Everyone was amazed at this sudden appearance, and the boars smelled Sangong, thinking that by defeating this man, they could easily find the tiger. However, the man announced that he was Sangong, and he now looked like a man with long black hair and red eyes. This greatly confused the boars, and they angrily couldn't understand how he had turned into a human. Sanggun attacks with great speed with his sword of justice, which he obtained from the black soul ghost of one of the boars. All the beasts around him are amazed at how fast and strong he acts. Sanggun himself is also amazed at how good his physical abilities are. When his sword penetrates an animal, he sucks its blood. The boars are confused and realize that the man has raised his level significantly and they don't know if they can beat him. However, one of them intervenes and cheers up the others, explaining that he is one compared to all of them, and after all, they too are spirit beasts. After saying that, angry boars start running at the guy from all directions. Sanggun, who isn't the least bit intimidated by this, raises his sword and stabs it into the ground, creating a semblance of black mist. The animals start to panic as they can't see anything anymore and can't find each other. One of the boars asks everyone to gather as suddenly the voice of a conjurer comes from somewhere asking for help. His eyes meet those of the other boar, whose eyes are filled with blood, and soon he is overtaken by black claws with eyes. Finally, all the boars were swallowed up by the black mist. Sangun was stunned, seeing how bloodthirsty the sword was, and how it didn't spare a single soul. If he had been even for a moment carried away by this, he might have fallen victim to this deadly weapon himself. The guy even begins to contemplate whether he should continue to carry this sword with him, or maybe he should get rid of it.